Now we ask Dr. Margaret Roberta Niles to take the floor and speak to the development of the regional strategy for the full rollout of the program for teaching IP in the CarIPI schools. Please go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And apologies to the mix-up with the muting. I was going to say happy good morning, good afternoon from sunny Barbados, but the rain has just tumbled down. So I'll say it in spirit, we're all sunny. And I want to say thank you for allowing me to give a brief overview of where we think the policy can be, the regional strategy can be for moving the project forward. So I want to start by saying that it is envisaged that one way to give sustainability and focus to the goal of the CARIFORM intellectual property rights and innovation idea is through the creativity and the IP in CARIFORM State Schools Program, which we're calling the IP Schools Program or project for short. The regional strategy then aims to inform the implementation of the program in the CARIFORM states. And we are going to address four things: the basis for the strategy, the current context, which we can quickly move through because that was beautifully provided this morning by our participants, the strategic goals and intended outcomes, and the approach that we will take. I am going to take off my video to save bandwidth so that we don't get a choppy presentation. So the IP in Schools program seeks to bring awareness to the critical role played by IP rights in innovation and creativity. And we're bringing that awareness to the heart of CARIFORM, which is always the youth, because the youth is always our future. And therefore, the aim of this regional strategy is to build awareness of creativity and IP in the CARIFORM states primary and secondary school levels, to introduce the teaching of creativity and IP in CARIFORM states in primary and secondary schools, and to contribute to the development of the next generation of creative inventors and innovators. So through the IP school program, and including it in the secondary and primary school curricula, we want to reinforce a positive perception about how IPRs can be used to generate value and improve livelihoods. And as we heard this morning, even starting at the early childhood level. So the strategy aims to answer three fundamental questions. The first one is, where are we currently as it relates to IPR in formal education in CARIFORM states? The second is, where do we wish to go with IPR in formal education in CARIFORM state schools? And the third is, how will we reach there? So the strategy will be formulated on an iterative model, which will be modified and refined through the stages of implementation of the schools program. And this will allow for the customization of the program to address the individual state's context. And we're going to use, I'm proposing that we use a 5-step model. The first step is always looking at how well are we doing? How well are we actually including IP? The second step is going to look at how much better do we want to be? The third step is how might we achieve this? And then we plan our actions and implement and review our results. It is, as I said, an iterative model where there is no end and no start. So we keep going until we get the IP inclusion in curriculum right within CARIFORM states. So if we look at the current context and answering the question, how well are we doing? We have to recognize that the Caribbean states within the IP schools program to be implemented tend to rank low in the low percentile of the Global Innovation Index. Jamaica's 2022 GII rank was 76 out of 132 countries. And they have a score of 27.7. Trinidad, they ranked 101 out of the same 132 countries with a score of 19.8. And Antigua and Barbuda were not mentioned in the GII ranking. So we need to put some effort into raising the recognition of IP within, or not only in those three countries, but across our region, so that we too can then be recognized for our contribution to the Global Innovation Index. Now, this index includes key metrics, the Innovation Input Subindex and an Innovation Output Subindex. And those indexes measure knowledge and technology outputs and creative outputs. They look at patent by origin, PCT patents by origin, utility models by origin, intellectual property receipts, trademarks, and industrial designs by origin. But what we can say is, even if we are ranked lowly on the GII index because we are not possibly reporting all that we do know that significant innovation does occur in countries across the region, and especially in the countries where the IP schools program will be piloted. So we heard briefly, I will go through this, of the IP engagement in primary and secondary school. We know that the IP property offices in the states, in the CARIFORM state, are piloting the IP education program. They all have already initiated some engagement at the primary and secondary levels. Antigua and Barbuda, they're building up awareness through competitions. The Jamaica Intellectual Property conducted essays, but they also are integrating with the schools at all levels, including tertiary and early childhood. They are infusing IP as best as they can across the curriculum. And the Trinidad and Tobago Property Office have been fully engaged with schools at the primary and secondary level as early as 2018, using the IP and Youth Initiative. They're using toolkits, they're using the Pororo branded materials, and they are evolving in summer camps hosted by the National Institute of Higher Ed, the Research and Science Technology, the NEHRS, the Caribbean Industrial Research, and of course, the Office of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, under which the CPIPO is taking the lead on this. But we have to also be very aware and acknowledge that there are limited opportunities for formal and sustained education in intellectual property in the region at this time. And this is where this project will sit. So how much better do we want to be, which is the second step of our model? And to answer that, we've designed 4 strategic goals to help build out the regional strategy. The first goal is to strengthen existing cultural, artistic, innovative, and educational structures to make them more aware of and responsive to the critical role of IPR in protecting innovation and creativity in CARIFORM state. The second strategic goal is to develop an IPR knowledge base, thereby supporting innovation and creativity at the primary and secondary levels in CARIFORM state schools. The third is to support the integration of IPR education in the existing curriculum at the primary and secondary levels in CARIFORM state schools. And the fourth is to build the IPR knowledge base and its adoption in primary and secondary schools through engaging in capacity building for all teachers across the CARIFORM state's education system. Now, following on how best we want to be, each goal will be supported by a set of outcomes. So strategic goal 1 will be supported by the outcome of attracting greater IPR awareness among key stakeholders in the CARIFORM state, influencing national and regional approaches and policies relating to the protection and recognition of IPR in regional innovations and creation, and developing levels of engagement and involvement among key stakeholders. The second strategic goal will be supported by the outcomes of contributing to the adaptation and creation of IPR educational guidelines that will support regional and national curriculum reform, and building competencies among stakeholders that contribute to the monitoring, evaluating, and overall sustainability of the IPR education product so that we can ensure ongoing improvement and refinement. So this is not being envisaged as a one-stop project, but what we're trying to do is to build sustainability so that as time goes on, we continue to have a voice and to influence the policies and educational structures that will allow for the inclusion and integration of IPR across all curricula. The third goal will be supported by developing quality IPR instructional resources to enable educational professionals in facilitating the effective IPR knowledge transfer to the students. And we will speak of that later. And the fourth goal will be supported by two outcomes: providing best practice training to enhance the pedagogical skills of educational professionals responsible for the delivery of IPR education at primary and secondary level, and to encourage creation of high quality learning experience and materials for students. So we're not only going to give them the adapted materials that Sharon would have mentioned earlier, but we're also going to encourage their creativity in expanding and expressing their creativity through creating innovative learning experiences and materials for students. So how are we planning to do all of this? Well, we're going to start with the program initiation strategy for the pilot states. And that starts with gathering baseline data. And what is that data? Well, it's going to be interest in incorporating creativity and IP in the primary and secondary school systems. We need to understand from the stakeholders if there is an appetite for incorporating the IP curriculum into the existing system. And then we would like to identify the possible points of inclusion of IP in the various school curricula. And Sharon would have mentioned it, because we're going to, as we go through this, realize that the methodology and the strategy are going to converge at different points. So that is what the baseline data will be. And we will collect that data through the inspection of relevant legislation, as mentioned earlier, because we need to ensure that we comply with the legislation of the land. Review the existing IP curriculum materials, which has already started, but we must at all stages engage our stakeholders. Interviews, focus groups, newsletters, public announcements. But the key to this regional strategy and the key to the success of this program and its sustainability is the involvement of our stakeholders at all stages of our implementation. So for the programs, after the initial strategy, the implementation strategy will have two phases. The first thing will lead to the establishment of IP schools program project teams. And these teams will determine the logistics for implementing the program in a specific territory. They will devise criteria for selecting the schools and teachers to participate in the pilot in the first instance, and formulate subject matter expert working groups who will then take the role in adapting the materials for the specific subjects that we will identify. And the project team will also monitor the progress of the pilot. We will also have, as I said, the establishment of the subject matter expert working groups. They will review the existing IP materials provided by the EU IPO Observatory. They will determine the level of adaptation required and prepare the draft adapted materials. And then they will refine and revise these curriculum documents based on recommendations of the validation group. Phase one will see the establishment of a validation group, which will be a multi-sectoral group drawn from not only teachers, but we are looking at a wide cross-section, our innovators, our creative sector, our unions even, and our employers as well. But we want to have that multi-sectoral group to validate and recommend refinements of adapted materials. We intend to utilize the World Cafe methodology, which is we all learn from each other. We all build from each other. And therefore, we're using that methodology for the validation process so that we can get what we call a full 360 in our development, where all of our stakeholders, no matter what level they're coming in at, we'll have some idea of what we intend to do and what our outcomes are expected to be as we implement the program. In phase 2, this is now where we take action. So we deliver the capacity building component through a series of teacher training workshops. We develop the contextual curriculum material and resources, and we install the pilot in the selected schools. We also will have a midterm review to gauge the feasibility of the pilot and the attainment of the program goals and objectives. And this will be one of the monitoring and evaluation activities that will involve the project team. And then when we have done our action and we've come through the first cohort, we will then have a program review where we will survey and assess the primary school and secondary school cohorts involved in the pilot. We will have the summative monitoring and evaluation activities, and we will have a concluding meeting where the project team, the subject matter expert groups, and the validation groups will come together to look at the results and therefore analyze and plan how we will refine and move forward. And of course, we will report to our stakeholder through other engagement activities. And I thank you.